Hello. This is an exploration into murder. Specifically, the murder engine. A open source pixel art ECS game engine built on top of MonoGame. I'm recording this as a potential way to look back upon it and to sort of review the learning curve that it might take to start on this. One thing that's should be stated to begin with. Number one is in development, but it is now sort of public. So there's a lot of different branching and changes that will be made. It's also not like 100% tutorialized. In fact, I haven't found any videos on it yet, so I'm interested in maybe putting mine out there. And lastly, I didn't develop it. This is not mine. This is developed by a small team, 7 people contributing on it. I believe Isidore Sofia is kind of like leading this project, Saint 11, Pedro, and I don't think I know the rest of these individuals. I think William Barbosa is one of the other ones, and there may be another who's kind of a bigger following on the team. But each of these people who have contributed have all contributed towards this in one way or another. It's pretty awesome. There are 6 branches, and there's a whole bunch of, well, there's 2 different example projects they sort of put out there that I will also be kind of exploring. One is the Neo City Express game that they built for Ludum Dare 53. It is a complete game with 6 levels, and it's very, very funny and very, very fun, actually. Especially when you have other people like watching you, or I was streaming it for some friends, and we're killing ourselves laughing at the dialogue and stuff like that. So I'll show it to you as well today. And what I have on screen here, and then also this Hello World project. So we're going to be going through just the base engine, the Neo City Express game, and the Hello Murder game or World project. Not necessarily in that order. In fact, let's take a look at what we got here. So right now I have 3 copies of Visual Studio's 2022 open. And something that I just want to say, if this is the first video you're coming across and you want to try this out, the only problem I had setting all this up is that I had Microsoft 2019 installed and Microsoft 2022 Visual Studio installed. And for some reason, my Visual Studio 2022 was pointing at all my 2019 folders and references and libraries and whatever. So it couldn't run .NET 7.0, which right now is a requirement in order to run the framework. It was only letting me run up to .NET 5.0. And so what I had to do is I had to uninstall Microsoft 2019 and then repair my install of 2022. And then finally I got everything working. Also, I've taken a look pretty thoroughly through Neon City Express. There are steps here on how to build it, so that's what we're going to be doing. I'm not just going to show you the downloaded version. I'm going to show you like actually the editor and the builder and everything. And here, the fmod binaries. They have this little part on here, they're not allowed to redistribute the fmod binaries on DLLs, so you have to download them manually, and that gets installed onto your machine. However, it's not, they say like, run the editor and check the log for instructions, and the log tells you that you need to put the DLLs in a certain folder that it's looking at, and here's where you'll end up kind of hitting your error breakpoints when it tries to load the library path for the fmod path. And this fmod path, it'll create it from your system, so you'll know exactly where to actually go. So in this case, I have it on my G drive. And if I go into the Neon City Express project, I think I had to put it into resources. No, I've already forgotten. Source, editor, bin, debug 7.0 run times Windows native. No, something like PC. You know what I can just do? I can save myself all this trouble and just search for the darn things. So here, bin debug, editor bin debug 7.0 resources. Yeah, so editor bin debug 7.0 resources fmod PC. There we go. And I put in just the fmod.dll. That wasn't enough. I had to put the fmodl.dll. That wasn't enough. I had to put the studio DLL. That wasn't enough. Then I had to put studio LDLL. And now with all of these files, it works. So, of course, these requirements could change, but I think they're done. Kind of editing this project for now. They may probably update the backend murder engine perhaps as they continue to develop, and maybe keep this project working or up to date. I can't speak for them, but for now, the last change on this was just last week when they added the murder source code. Now that it's available, so I don't know what else they'll do with that there, but yeah, that's all I had to do to get that working. So hopefully all the other projects are also working smoothly. So you can see that I actually have them all running. So where are they? Well, I don't need the Visual Studio windows open anymore. I can go right to my editor windows. Now, I do have a very large screen. That's going to let us look at all of these at the same time, which is cool. I do hope that comes across for you as the viewer. So why don't we put this in the order from least complex or least gamey to more standalone gamey. So on the far left, we have the base murder engine as it stands right now. In the middle is the Hello World project, and on the right is the MonoGame dev project. So if we press play, for example, it plays here, and I guess it's going to play at this resolution, but the gameplay definitely does seem to be clamped. So if I press continue, it's at the final level, which I beat it, but they don't save after the final level. So here it is, and then yeah, it's just clamped to what I guess is 16 by 9. Is there a way for me to quit, or do I have to wait for the game? Okay, so can just quit and exit, and I get back to the editor. If I play on the actually I had this backwards. Murder engine should be over there, and then Hello World in the middle. Right. If I play the Hello World project, I have that. New game, options, exit. New game, there's no game for me to play because it's just the Hello World project. So I actually don't know if there's a shortcut or a way to just stop the runtime. Nothing happens if I hover over it. So I guess we'll just close it and then run it again. Not a big deal. Should be pretty quick to open. Although, because we're running it through Visual Studios, it's got to do all the debug hooks and all that. So what are we actually going to see when we look at this stuff? Well, if we start with the main game project, this is the one that's most filled out. And we can kind of see how they've organized their things and how they kind of expect that the engine will be used. Of course, this will change over time, but just as of today. So we have a whole bunch of different elements here, and this is an ECS game engine. I've used ECS in the past, so I understand a little bit about like the world and the systems and stuff like that, but I'm not a ECS developer. I'm pretty much just a C# Unity developer. So I know about games devs, and I know a little bit about world states and entities and components and that kind of stuff. I'm definitely not going to be your guide on that, unfortunately. But hopefully, I don't know, maybe somebody like Turbo Makes Games or other people will also pick this up, or I'll just learn as we go. So if I look through some of these things, as I'm playing the game, I'm starting to understand what each of these elements are. So the car levels, these seem to be like the waves as they appear. And so these are drop down, and you can see which ones you actually have open in the tabs based on which ones are highlighted here. If I change any of these values, then yeah, it actually will affect the game. So something that's kind of easy to see is like the truckers, because there's like several truckers that all come up at the same time. And each one has like a wait time on it, and they come through. And so these are stored as JSONs, and they reference these prefabs to spawn. So it's a wait time. It has the lane that's supposed to go in, the position. So if it spawns at the bottom or the top, or top reverse, I'm not sure what top reverse is, and then which prefab. So yeah, in this case, it's all trucks, so it all spawns the same truck, and then the last truck is this luxury truck. So okay, well, where do we find those prefabs? Well, they're here in this prefabs tab. Before we get to those, though, let's just check out the other things, and before we get too complicated, let's make sure we close this. So consequences, an accident. This is these are all pretty much JSON's objects, and they have different ways of laying them out and just kind of talking about what these are. So a trigger, I think this is pretty much any kind of function or interaction. It can even reference a component. Let's minimize those other ones so they're not in the way. And if I full screen this, you're not really getting any additional information here. So I should probably change the stream to point at just this window, but anyway, let's requirements, what they need to do, the interactions they're going to have, situations almost accidents, after the accident, interact and reload, or characters, the driver, like what's going to happen. For example, starting a monologue. The dating, this is their Tinder dating stuff. It's pretty funny. So it's really just almost like a scriptable object or something, with the portraits and the description and I don't know what situation means in this case, but I guess they're all Tinder related, and it's like maybe the first swipe, second swipe, third swipe, because I do believe they didn't seem randomized. They did seem to come up in the same order. Because you open Tinder one time on your phone, then later in the game you open Tinder again, and it was the same people I saw before, so I'm not sure. Then we have the days. So these are pretty much like the levels, and you can see they have the different like stages of the day. So before the level actually starts, if there's a monologue that happens, what cell phone text you get, if there's like a Tinder event that happens. In this case, on the first day, there is no Tinder event. The outro, what happens during the driving, and then I believe possible cars. I don't know if this is a random list or if this is the list of the cars that show up, etc. Because it's called possible cars, I'm imagining this is like a randomized list. The consequences, so you can have an accident. The next day is day 2, so it's pretty much just like pointing to the next thing. And then the delivery content, this is like your objective for that level. It's called the used robot. Destination cyber district. That's just a text string. It doesn't really do anything else in the game. They don't have like different colors or levels that I noticed. And yeah, so they have each of the levels here. What day is Tinder? Here. So on day 3, 4, on day 4, you can see there's a Tinder event there, so it adds the dating. Day 2, monologue, neuro boost, Um, this is day 2. And day 2 has Tinder as well. So day 2 and day 5 both have Tinder. And so, I mean, this way of working makes a lot of sense to me. I think this could allow you to build things out pretty quickly. The part I'm not quite at is how I would say start editing these things, like days and before driving and after driving. I actually noticed that if you hover over some things, like here day, events will be triggered throughout the day. But if I go to before driving, there's nothing. Monologue, there's nothing. So I wonder if there's some way to like comment on elements, and that's how that will come across. So that if you have something like, oh, time, slice of the journey that this dialogue will be randomly triggered. So for me, I definitely want, or for if you're working with a team, you definitely want to be commenting on these as much as possible. Force event, set when the event is forced on the player to resolve. So all these things are specific to this particular game. Other features, I don't know what these features necessarily mean or do, but these are all the different systems that they affect. So I guess the character, this almost seems like it's an entity and that these are all the components, but it's not. It's all the systems that it's referencing. Actually, before we move on, yeah, so they're all definitely systems. So perhaps features are sets of systems. So sounds, for example, it's sound system, music system, car sound system. That seems like if you want to reference any sound, then here's your 3 options. Now, if I like click on these, nothing's happening. It's not like it's taking me to the system or anything. I just have the option to add a system here, or delete a system, or reorder the systems. I'm not sure why that matters, but reordering is useful just for keeping yourself organized as well. Then there's a whole bunch of this generated content, which I'm wondering if you're even supposed to touch. It's probably here so that you can see. For example, you can see like the frames, animation things, and because the Murder Engine is kind of focusing on pixel art, I imagine that a lot of this generated content is coming from the animation data that you're giving it. So I don't know if it's specifically meant to work with a sprite. I think it is, but that's something I need to explore a bit more further. There's the library, but there's just one, and this has actually quite a bit in it. And it seems to reference a whole bunch of different elements, from the skins to sound effects, even things like lane positions. I'm guessing that's the pixel value of the lanes, how far they are, and things like that. Explosion effects, different worlds, world asset if the player dies. So I guess what scene it kind of changes to when the player dies. What the pause UI is used for. So perhaps the library is almost like the game state, or the game, what's it called in Unreal? Game world? No. The world settings, I think, is what it's called. World settings, something like that, where it's like you can give it the like default player prefab to spawn, and I don't know, but this includes a lot more granular than that. Like this includes driver, granny. One thing that I feel like would be useful is to be able to, oh, I didn't mean to change the driver to granny. Now, undo, I'm sorry, whoops. Quick play, I didn't mean to do that. No, I'm sorry. Okay, well, it was not happy with that. We'll try that again. I don't think I need to leave this open, but it does have to build it. And then launch it. And then launch it, okay. So not exactly sure quick play versus play, but let's Yeah, we are back in this, and okay, so it didn't save, which is good, I guess. I think we'd have to either. Oh, this is our player save data. Okay, we'd have to save the asset manually here, which is okay. That's fine. Open folder. That opens the location of the asset. Okay, renaming. Obviously, that probably just rename the thing. Deleting it, that'd get rid of it. Definitely don't want to do that. Fmod image, okay. No, Atlas editor. Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff in here. There's even like the bounds. There's a whole bunch of vents they have defined here. At the moment, I feel like I'm just explaining this project and I'm not really getting into the meat of things. So let's just maybe try and wrap this up. Modifiers. I don't think I know what modifiers mean, but I guess that they're effects on the player, like when you're sleepy, or they're things that get layered on top of other cars multiply. Yeah, like I'm not sure. Like what is the good shit? Toggle. What does that mean? I assume it's only on slowdown, so I think that's the first drug that you take, which is like the tutorial drug, and I think the whole gameplay is slower because this is like speed or something that you take. And then we're kind of starting to get to the more visual things like the particles. So we have emitters, and then we have the actual particle here. So I think this is probably pretty similar to working with like a particle system in Unity. So I don't think I'd have any trouble figuring that out. There we go. I was off in space, but if I go here, so if you're zoomed out, it shows you the X, Y, and then zooming in, I'm not sure what this rectangle is, but it seems like I can select the particle system by clicking on it, and then the smoke particles that it's emitting, circles, rectangles. It does seem to save, or I can give it a specific asset. Points, I'm not sure what the points versus rectangles. I guess rectangles you can edit the width and height. I hit texture and it was not happy. So that's fine. I think I will call this episode exploring the murder engine and the existing projects. All right, I mean, particles are particles. They are definitely cool, and more particles you can have, the more alive your world will feel, and you can add just a lot more flavor to things. Prefabs is where I think it starts to get interesting, because this is kind of more like how I tend to work in Unity, is I just work on prefabs and scripts and sort of putting them together. So the first one here under cars is the bike, and we can already see that there's several different elements to this. I'm guessing that something like the red is the collider, but I don't know what the blue or the green or any of those other things could represent. So we're going to dig into this a little bit and try and find out. So position, that's like a transform. And then we start to get into the components. So I don't know if it's required for all, say, prefabs to have components on them, or positions on them, I mean. If we check through them all quickly, we can see that they seem to have all positions. But is it a requirement they have positions or not? That, I guess, remains to be seen, because a prefab definitely is something that probably exists in the world space, so it wouldn't make sense for it to not have a position. Whereas all these components are definitely completely interchangeable. So with an ECS system, you want one component to usually represent one thing, such as the speed. So normally, ECS systems, you want to break things up as much as possible. And so it's actually a little bit odd seeing speed, acceleration, mass friction all on one component. However, there's no actual rule saying that it has to be like that, that it has to be individualized. So if you want to kind of create them all together in saying that, yeah, all this is the physics related elements that's going to move around with and stuff, then yeah, that's fine. And then engine component, desired speed, lerp amount, this kind of makes sense. Like, well, desired speed is a min and max, although max is a negative number, I guess. And then the lerping amount that's going to go between those two things. And then you have a collider. So this is not a component, but it's actually a collider. I guess it's indicated with these icons. So position has an icon, collider has an icon, a sprite component has an icon. So yeah, a sprite definitely seems like what it's intended to use with. So the collider, we have a whole bunch of different options here. So if it's a solid collider, if it's has a hole or is a hole, I'm not sure the difference there. Let's zoom in. I'm kind of expecting it to zoom in where my mouse cursor is, but it's just zooming in where the center point of the camera is. So that's just something I have to get used to. And we can drag it and modify it that way. We can recenter it. If we change, these are actually, I realize now they're toggles, they're not radio buttons. So it can be solid with a hole, although I don't see how we would change the hole or define the hole. We can make it a trigger instead of, say, a collision box, a hitbox. I would think that it is a hitbox, but perhaps solid means like, yeah, other solid things can't go through this, as opposed to a hitbox, which is just register a hit. Shapes, I think this would let us select different shapes. Okay, this lets us add more shapes to the collider. So we can have one shape, which is this red collider, or we can have multiple colliders that make up the collider's shape. So if we had a very complicated hitbox, I guess, and maybe there are some things that have that. So we'll remove that. So we have points and line point shape. That's an interesting one. Where is it? You'd think that's 714, but whoops, didn't mean to duplicate it. And then debug color, yeah, so that's useful, so we can actually see, hey, it's just a standard thingy. Cool. Color picker. Yeah, so we know that the red one is this one. And if we keep going, enemy component, this is an empty component, so this is being used as a tag, I imagine. Facing component, so if we change it to down, okay, interesting. Just telling us how to orientate the sprite. And then an A sprite component. So where are these other colored components coming from? Oh, children. Okay, it must be in the children. Okay, we'll come to those in a second. So the facing component, so the A sprite component, target sprite batch. Not sure what target sprite batch means. The animation. Okay, so this is the actual. I guess I'm not sure what this. Where it's getting this list from. Like, there must be assets that are like somehow tagged as animation assets. The offsets. So yeah, from its center. Rotate with facing. So if we turn this off and then we set this down, then yeah, it doesn't do anything. So you could have it not doing that, or you could have it flip with the facing or whatever. next animations. This isn't set, so I'm not sure what this would do. Animation started time, so you could have some kind of delay on it if you want. And Y sort offset. So I'm guessing this is for Z fighting or Y fighting, just to make sure that this is on a particular layer, I think. It looks like, I'm not sure what this drop down does. It was empty, and now I've put something on it and I can't undo that. So, not sure if that's intended. We're not going to save this asset, so it's okay. It looks like, unless we close it though, it doesn't forget our progress. So that's interesting. And then we can save all assets from there. So in the children, let's recenter this because I think this is going to be important. In the children, we have our first child, which is itself its own prefab or entity, and it has a set of components on it. So it has a position and a collider. This collider is a trigger collider, and this trigger collider, I guess we don't know what it does yet. So for now, we just know that it has a trigger right in front of it. This next one's called the near-miss collider. And near-miss collider, that's the thing that prompts the near-miss indicator. And so this collider, check this out, this is also a trigger, so if something comes close to it, I presume it would check for the player collider as opposed to a different car. And then that just plays the near-miss thing. So it does not physically a blocker or anything like that. Then interactive component, spawn near-miss interaction. Okay, so this is the component that's actually going to do the interaction when that collider trigger is activated and interact on collision component. I think this is the thing that's going to maybe do the messaging. Yeah, send messages. So it sends a message, only the player is able to activate this collision interaction, and then that probably activates this. My guess is that if I wanted to say edit this, I would have to go into the, where's my window of all my files? What the heck? Control T, Control Shift T, go to files, yeah, and we'll look for spawn near misinteraction. There we go. So spawn near misinteraction, runtime only, so it's not added during the editor, but rather dynamically added in runtime. And this must be the actual interaction. It's a struct. It's not a component, so that probably has the whole system where it's like, maybe it has bakers or something like that, and then it bakes the interaction components into, I'm not sure. I still have to kind of learn about that stuff. But here we can see that it has this main public interact, and then it does this coroutine called wait for crash. If the player does not crash, then it's not a near miss. Or sorry, if the player crashes, then it's not a near miss. If they don't crash, then it was a near miss, because they did get close enough to trigger the near miss system to start. And then it like increments the near miss count, and spawns the near miss prefab, creates it in the world, sets its location to be near. Okay, cool. So this part all makes sense to me. There's a couple things like I guess I can track down these references, start looking into this, but yeah, this pretty much makes sense. Asset services.try create. Obviously, this is a new way of calling, like try create an entity. And library surface.get road library.nearmiss prefab. I have a feeling this is almost like a singleton pattern of like getting a library, but it's not. It's not a singleton pattern. It's getting this class. It is a static class. Okay, so it might be a basically singleton pattern. And then getting the road library, which is also static, and then getting this specific library asset, or getting the library assets. Okay, so that's what these library assets are, at least in the way this game is using them. They contain a whole bunch of things that can be used by different scripts, and then we can basically get anything that's in our library and then get a specific item out of it to then, say, grab like a prefab, like here. Okay, perfect. So that all makes sense. Cool. Moving on. What else do we have? Let's keep this open on the side so we can kind of keep referencing this. So this was our near miss. Close that. And then the last thing is the horn, which is its own child prefab. It has a position. It has a collider. Okay, and that's what the green collider is. So if the player... Let's just see this here. It doesn't have a player only. Okay. So if anything gets in this zone, then it will honk. This is also a trigger because it doesn't need to actually collide. And then honk on interact, we can go to that as well. Honk on interact and random chance. So there's only a chance for it to honk at you if you get in this zone. And it calls this sound player. So this is the singleton pattern, the instance that I was expecting, as opposed to the static class and the static function. So let's track this down. So LD sound player. No. Looks like there's two. Oh, it's a partial class. Okay. So there's this like bass, and then I guess there's this iSound player. This is the sound player for the road, which relies on Fmod. This loads library into the process. I guess this is xplat. What does this mean? I guess this is xplat. What? What is xplat, and why is it I guess? What? This is also Fmod based, so I mean it's not. Okay, and this is the error that we actually saw when we started up the game and Fmod wasn't working and sounds weren't working. So yeah. Cool beans. Obviously, I'm not exactly sure what all this is doing other than just loading Fmod, and I haven't never used Fmod manually like this. So to edit this or to somehow fix it or update it or whatever, if there was some issue, I don't know. But I'm sure I could dig into this and understand a bit more how Fmod works at a lower level and how we load it and stuff like that. But we can just use this example if we want just to get sounds running and working. Okay, so I mean that's a basic bike. It has a whole bunch of stuff in it. I'm assuming most other kinds of cars are basically exactly the same. They're just different sizes. They have different animations. So they have child, near miss, horn. Yeah, it's all pretty much the same. Is there anything different between a car and a bike? Let's close those. Nope. If I close these, I mean, there could be things in there that's different, but interestingly, the bike has. Oh no, okay, that's because I just haven't saved it. It's probably slightly off, and that's probably my fault. So that's okay. Okay, this is starting to make more sense as I work through it. I could probably start beginning to sort of tweak things and start replacing things to if I wanted to keep this game style. And the more and more changes I have to make, I'd have to start changing things. Let's look at the effects. And even let's even look at the boost as well, because this is a spawned object in the world, and if the car comes over this trigger, I would assume, then yeah, then it's going to activate this boost thing. When it does that, I don't know why it's labeled as an enemy, but it does have the facing component, which I feel like that would be the other way. But okay. Maybe there's some logic there and why that happens. Give boost interaction. So if we look that up, give boost interaction. So on interact, interacted with, set boost, interactor dot set boost. So this can actually set boost on more than just the player, if I'm understanding this correctly. Okay. Plays the car boost sound. Yeah, okay. So that's pretty straightforward. I don't know. I'm not sure why they have this public constructor here. Maybe that's just a requirement. Not sure. Ace break component. Okay. So boost pretty simple, and then effects. Destroy animation complete component. So obviously this explosion is, I'm gonna guess it's in the library. Let's see. Yeah, explosions. So it is referenced in here. So we can pull the explosions from pretty much anywhere. I wonder, explosion. Oops, I did not spell that right. Explosion. I've ended up in a JSON. Explosion.json. That's not what I wanted. Explosion. Explosions in library asset. Explosion 0.json. So in the library asset. Okay. And this is probably how we would edit the library asset, so that we have references to these things. Okay. Explosion.json. And that's the actual, like, JSONs. It doesn't look like there's anything else in here. So I guess if I find maybe references on this. No. There we go. var explosion equals game.data.getPrefab. In the road library, get the prefab that is the explosion size. So there's probably explosion 0, explosion 1, or explosion 1 and 2. I guess it's probably 0 and 1. And then create and fetch world. I wonder if that means create and fetch into this specific world, or create the world and fetch the world, or create this. Must be get prefab.create and fetch. Yeah, so it must create it into this world and then fetch it from that world. And now we have a reference to our explosion entity, and we can set its position. And then we can also play the sound. Okay. Cool. Get pause prefab. All right, moving on. So I'm pretty sure these are all going to work very similarly. I'm not sure. Why is the near miss collider its own thing? Spawn near miss interaction. Is that because in order to have this near miss child here, yeah, because this is an instance of the near miss collider, whereas this horn is not an instance of the horn. It's a little strange to me. So they did horn one way and they did near miss collider a different way. I don't know if that's... There's a lot of things in these projects that, like, I don't know if there's a specific reason for this intention because I didn't make it. And it's also possible that they just built it in two different ways just to show us. But it's also possible that, like, two different people had done these two different things. I don't know. Either way, I think both ways are valid. I don't see any problem with either. Obviously, instances of will make referencing back to the original thing a little bit easier. Whereas the horn, having to, like, I guess rebuild the horn a whole bunch of times, can have more unique horns or something. But I think you would still be able to do this if you just had some way to indicate what sound a particular horn was playing. And then finally, there's only one UI, which is the pause UI, at least in this prefab area, or sorry, in this prefab folder, but there's also then this UI, which, strangely enough, I don't know why it acts like that. I would have thought that the center mattered, but it ends up being all the way up here. Does it matter? My size? No. Okay. Position. If I increase its position. Okay. Maybe it's just has to do with like its anchoring. It's offset. Huh. Left UI base. I mean, presumably there might be a way for me to set. I can set dimensions. Like, I think I understand why it's this way. It's like this is showing the anchoring, and if I could set this to like, I don't know, 1920 by 1080 somehow, then I'd be able to see that this is where the UI will be exactly all the time. I'm not sure though how this fits into that part. It does not have any children. Why? No Y sort offset. Okay, so we probably have to look a bit more to understand how these UI things work. Portrait. So it looks like this is pretty much the same thing. It's like this is gonna go here, and this UI will be here. So of course the portrait goes over top of the UI. Although, smirk, smile, serious. That does change things. It changes this like next animation. I don't know if that has anything to do with this Y sort offset. There's no comment on this. I thought this would have to do with the layering of these assets when they're put together. But I actually kind of wonder, like, UI skin. Okay, if I go in this UI skin JSON, can I look up UI skin? Okay. And then if I look up the references to UI skin, get UI skin. Okay, 7 references on this. Cell phone state machine, my menu state machine. Okay, it makes sense that a whole bunch of these things reference the UI skin. So the base HUD, it's going to draw the skin, and that's going to draw the sprites. Their float X and float Y. Yeah, I guess it has to do with the float X and Y. I don't actually remember exactly where the float X float Y is, but there is the renderer. You can reference the renderer here, or actually gets passed, and then we have the camera's height that we can reference here, the camera's width, stuff like that. So, I mean, at least we have access to a lot of the stuff we would normally do with like cameras and figuring out where to anchor the UI and all that. Let's move on. This isn't meant to be a 4-hour stream. In fact, let's just check how we're doing here. Okay, 50 minutes. You know, to get through this project, take an hour to like kind of sit and understand it. I mean, that's pretty fair, I'd say. And it's not like I even understand everything about it, but I'm starting to get the picture of how these elements come together. So yeah, so these sounds, they seem to just reference events. Can I play it? Ooh, I can. And it does seem to actually be coming across even on the stream, so that's cool. Oh no. Oh no, how do I end them? No, close. Oh no. I don't know how to stop. I'm panicking. They started to get very loud and they were overlapping. There must be something, right? Like, you can't just have a play button without a stop button. I thought hitting the play button twice would work. Car impact. Okay, so that one doesn't loop. The music loop. This is probably pretty long. So I imagine that this is going to go on for a bit, and it's probably blowing me out in terms of speaking, so let's maybe just lower that down a bit. This could have this as the background for the entire video. Yeah, so not sure how we're just end this, I guess. I could hit the play button. Nah, that didn't work. It's still playing in the background. There has to be a way, right? Hide tab bar, no. I guess there's it's just something I don't know. Okay, we're gonna have to end that because I'm getting a bit overwhelmed. Too much audio stimulus. So yeah, other than these events that they're tied to, I don't see anything else here to really discuss. Now we get to something interesting, the story element. So they have characters and they have speakers. So in here, I'm seeing UI that appears somehow baked. Okay, so these are like nodes and probably transitions. So if you have almost an accident, then he says maybe this is getting a hand, and then she says, young man, don't you ever give up. For the deliveries, there's a level 1 delivery. Plays a... Oh, yeah. This is a really funny sound effect when I first heard it. It reminds me of... I don't even remember now what it's called. That platformer that has that at every checkpoint. Like a male or female. Oh, yeah. It's really funny. So I don't know if there's any difference in how it picks this. Looks like this is a dice icon, so I assume it means it randomly picks one of these three to show you. So unbelievable, or wow, or you're amazing. And yeah, all of these seem like they're probably the same. They have a different delivery thing. So heirloom, secret. Okay. So I mean, this makes sense. Like, it's very because these are very short. It's just like entry point, this event, and then show this thing. I'm not really sure. Like, kind of what defines this, like how it knows that this is UI, but I guess it also knows that this is like an exit point, and maybe there has something to do with like the dialogue manager and how it shows you a dialogue window, or it shows you like this dialogue screen specifically. End race. I don't know what race is, but okay. Game over. Oh, I've never seen these scenes because I didn't fail. I almost thought you couldn't fail. Congratulations, you got the good ending. Oh my goodness. Okay, spoilers. Okay, intro. Yeah, okay, so we saw this intro. So, intro day 1, setup day 2, setup day 3, setup 4, setup, okay. And then these are... See, I thought it would have been node to make up these three things, but it's not. It's day 1, package being delivered, destination. It's like these are set up like that, and I don't see a way to edit. And day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, none of them have anything else. So I don't see like a way to add. There's a plays forever thing, but I don't see a way to like add this or change this. So interesting. Maybe I can look up like day 1 setup day one setup. So an intro.json, it has these. They're immutable arrays. Okay, but the question is, how would you change these things? Like, I could probably change it manually here in the JSON, but there must be some kind of editor for this, because it doesn't feel like this is an editor, really. Yeah, we have our conversation JSONs and all that kind of stuff JSONs. It's like the intro JSON. Unless that is the intention, is to actually set this up in the JSON. Name intro, dialogues, values, types. Yeah, so there might be something else here that I'm not understanding. And then we have our speakers. So client, looks like that isn't a thing, I guess. The cutscenes, hospital portrait, that's pretty funny. The deliveries of the different things. I don't remember this one. This top secret one, but maybe I was so focused on like dying or not dying or being happy that I passed the level or whatever, because it is pretty intense gameplay style. It's actually super fun. Mayor, Remy, Sis, Tinder. Yeah, so your Sis doesn't have an icon, and the Mayor doesn't have an icon, although the what's it called? This cutscene, I guess that's supposed to be the Mayor. Which is weird because I think it says this is handshake, and then something else says hug, and then something else says like she and he, and I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's just what happens with game dev when you're building a whole bunch of stuff. So we talked about the UI skin, but this is really just seems to be like a JSON that's putting all the assets that we're gonna use. And if we actually want to look at the UI elements, here we only see whereas there's the player as well. We didn't talk about the player and how the player runs around and all that kind of stuff. Oh, like I only see this one and the portrait, but there must be one for the other side of the screen, right? I don't know what cameraman is. So for some of these things, I feel like I'm just missing something. Maybe it's in the world. It could be. Could have something to do with the world here. So I have so many tabs open now. Close them all. Okay, well at least that made it easy. So before menu, delivery begins, game over, game level, intro. So of all these so far, the game level is really the only thing I've seen that's not more than just a state machine. That is more than just a state machine. Before level has a state machine and music. Delivery begins has a state machine and sound. It looks like. Oh, ooh, where this? Okay, that's weird. This entity picker. And then I clicked on sound, and then this kind of popped up. How do I? Okay. Okay, so this case, this makes sense. It's like, yeah, I can see. I should probably make this a bit taller, eh? I might have been missing some stuff. Some of these other things. Right component left. Okay. No. No. Okay. Well. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, music. So we can see the music component, the title music here, delivery, the sound component, the sound that plays. It's that. Okay, so that doesn't include the oh yeah thing. Right, because the oh yeah is at the success, not the delivery begin. Intro. So the intro is just the state machine, and I haven't gotten into the state machines just yet. And then the level is actually this tile set, which doesn't actually seem like there's much here. And then, but there is like a tile set in the level. There's like the road, right? And then the left portrait and the right portrait, which, yeah, so that references the portrait component. And then this guest portrait, it's mostly grounding, but it can also be like the car and other things. Light cutscene test. So this is a test scene with state machine. Light cutscene, menu. So main intro until it begins. Okay, and then the music component. Test scene. I'm saying okay sometimes, but I actually don't necessarily know why I'm saying okay or what like the okay is about. Well, one thing I did just see now is that when I open this for the first time, let me close everything else. I opened this test scene, I saw that one particle of smoke, which is kind of strange. It's almost like I wonder if the particle system is enabled by default, and so it spits out a particle, and then the next frame it gets turned off because the car's not damaged. So that's just kind of like an interesting thing to note. Also, I guess this red must be maybe the player's hitbox or something. Let's check out the player. We didn't check out the player prefab yet. So it has position, it has the car component, so like that's movement related stuff. It does have this collider, so it's a solid hitbox actor collider. Okay, so this is the most complex collider we've seen so far. They also have colliders representing vision cones, I guess. And then, yeah, also interesting that this is a kind of ovalish collider, and I guess that's because I don't know where it would be defined other than maybe here in like mass and friction, like when you bounce off of another vehicle, you tend to bounce at kind of certain angles, and that must be these angles here. Because if the player's car was a rectangle or even a sphere, well, if it was a rectangle, then you would bounce off, I think, either too predictably or oddly not predictable. Like it would be always like very flat collisions. Because the other cars also have rectangular, or they do have rectangular hitboxes, even the motorcycle. And then if it was a sphere, you would always bounce off like a pool ball. So you kind of always have a really harsh angle. And I don't know if that's actually a very specific reason, because this is a polygon instead of like a circle. Because it could just be a circle, right? With a certain radius. But the car is not a circle. And then also, if it was just a box, then like a box would probably be fine. All the other vehicles are boxes, but again, maybe that has some strange consequences of it being a box. Okay, so it has this interactor component. Yeah, so it can interact with things. It has a player component. Current state normal or casting. Interesting. So player component. So it is an ECS system, so it's a struct. It's an I component. Player state, so it gets constructed with a state. It can have its state changed, and then it can either be normal or casting. There's no references on the state change, but it does look there like there are references to the to the constructor. One which is just here in the set state, and then the other one which is this set player. Sets the entity and adds or replaces this component. Although this doesn't have any references on it either. So I guess the player is not being set up with this component dynamically. Either this is like is used implicitly in the entity extensions or something, and the only thing that really matters is all these references to the player component. Say, okay, and there's actually a lot of references here. It's marked as a unique entity. It's marked that it doesn't persist when it's saved. So I think this window is probably really useful to kind of go through and see all the ways in which the player is referenced, but it's also, it looks like this entity extensions class, I was reading up on it a little bit, and there's like so many stuff in here. Stop editing this file. This code was generated by our own generator. In order to modify this, please run the generator with whatever settings you want. Okay. So yeah, this is the generated file, and it just references all these different elements. If a game doesn't have player speed, or like a specific player prefab, like maybe you're controlling a big army or whatever, then maybe you wouldn't need to set it up like this. And then there's the true ending, which I would like to know if I didn't get the true ending, but I don't know. I don't know how to take it from here. I kind of imagined that these world objects would be like kind of like more like scenes and would have a whole bunch of stuff in them, but really they're just have like state machines and things. Okay, main room. This is something actually I didn't look at before, so I don't know why this thing has an edit button on it, but okay. So what is a room? Tile grid component, room component. Okay. It's like weirdly yellow, which I feel like is different. There's the tile set. Now the tiles must be generated because it's not a fixed road surface. So it kind of makes sense that I don't see a preview of the road. Same even with these portraits, like they must be placed during runtime dynamically so you don't see them. Scrolling sprite 1, scrolling sprite 2. I don't know what that means. But then the player does exist here. And this is all in the test scene, so I don't know what this test scene is really representing. If we go to the game level, I actually noticed that there's a main room thing here now too. Okay, so the only thing that has main room is this test scene, and is this main the game level scene. So just close that. So the difference between the two is that day in the test scene is in the all entities, whereas here it's in the main room. So room. A room is a type of component. Properties. Room components. GUID floors. So I assume rooms is like kind of purpose built for setting up like room based dungeon crawlers or other kind of like RPGs. So it's interesting that like even this game has kind of a room, which is the level, which is the tile grid. So obviously I'm not sure exactly how they're using it yet and sort of how to modify that or how to make it an infinite kind of scrolling grid tile thing like they have now versus a fixed level room. Something that's like this game where it's like kind of a tile set that's like changing and looping and stuff like that is kind of a bit more programmatically driven, I think, as opposed to animation driven. And also it's not fixed, like it's not a fixed level or a Metroidvania or something else where things are predefined. So the only really thing that's predefined here is like the stuff in the library. Right, so we have the bounds, we have the lane positions. So like let's look up lane position. Okay, that's not the lane position thing we want. Lane position. Oh, this is lane position. CS, get lane position. Okay, this is used in the state machine called cars level manager. Okay, so we're starting to get into state machines. Spawn warning in lane position. So spawn the warning in the prefab and in the lane position. Okay, so there's probably there's bottom and top. I don't know what top reverse is, but it looks the same as top. Ouch. In fact, it is the same as top. Is it not? Am I crazy here? Set global position, X position, bounds top, plus 15, magic numbers. Set facing, direction down. Set spawn on death, action game now, plus 0.4. Okay, so why is it not just this? Like, why is that even there? And I mean, that also asks the question, like, is top reverse even used in anything? Okay, so here there's a difference between top and top reverse. Because this is bounce top minus 80, this is bounce top minus 10, with a direction of, so top, this direction is 1.7f, and this direction is minus 1.1f. Okay, interesting. So I guess I don't know how the player movement works relative to the world and the grid, but perhaps if the character, assuming that the actual game world and everything is moving, like it looks like it's moving, and it's not just the tile set moving and the players staying in the exact same coordinates. If we assume that the player's actually moving and the tile set is what is standing still, because, well, effectively it could be the same way. It's probably a lot less efficient to move a tile set than it is to move a player, but, you know, there could be other reasons that you'd want to do that. But let's assume that the player is actually moving and the tile set's stationary. So if the player's actually moving, you could have cars that are coming up from the bottom and are moving faster than you, and then they go from the bottom to the top. You could have cars that are coming from the top and they're slower than you, so they go from top to bottom, you pass them. You could also have cars that are coming from the top and they are going up, but then you never see them, and you can have cars from the bottom that are going down, you never see them. So what's the top reverse? What is this last thing that we're forgetting? So its direction is up. And interesting that the bottoms, there's no facing direction for the bottom. There's only a facing direction from the top. Oh, of course. Because there's another lane. There's a lane on the far left side, which is like the counter traffic lane. It's a bit loud on my screen. Okay, yeah. So there's 3 lanes on the right, which are going ahead, and then there's this lane in the left or the middle or the one you start in, which is a bi-directional lane, and then this lane on the far left, which is counter going against you. So okay, so the cars are facing different directions when they're coming from the top, they're coming from the bottom, which is why in where is it here, whether you're coming from the top or your top reverse, your position and your facing shouldn't be the same, though. I think that's what's throwing me off. Why would your facing be the same? Because when we look in this place, your facing is different. But this is setting your facing as opposed to, well, they're both setting your facing. So I feel like maybe this is a mistake, and one of these facings should be up and the other facing is down. I don't know. But this one, at least, it makes sense to me, because if you're coming from the top and you're counter traffic, or you're going the other way, then yeah, you'd be facing downwards, facing towards the player. And if you're trying to pass the player, then yeah, you're facing upwards. Okay. I mean, that part at least is making sense to me now. Oops, I didn't mean to stop the editor, but I did need to get out of the game, so either way. Okay, I think this is a pretty good exploration of like just the editor and all the elements in the editor, and basically in the entire game, because it's not a particularly big game. We went over pretty much all the different categories of things at least, and we've looked at some scripts. Now there's a couple last things, which is the editor settings, the game settings. This is like the game width and height, so the resolutions, and I don't know if there's I don't know how flexible this will be, like if you have a setting screen, stuff like that. The setting screens that they have is just like sounds on or off. But they do have a like target FPS here, fixed updates, stuff like that. And they even have themes, which is pretty interesting. This is themes for the game, as opposed to the editor, I guess. So I'm not sure how these themes are used. Like red, green, accent faded, warning, generic asset. Like what is a generic asset, and what is, I don't know. Maybe these are ways to easily change colors in the game. If we kind of look for these colors, maybe we can kind of figure things out, right? So we have like the background blue. We have this kind of like highlighted selected green, and the text. I don't feel like I see these colors here. The faded, okay. It's not yellow, it's not green. It's almost like a cyan color or a teal color, and that's not here. So exploration, unexplored color. Oh, that's interesting. Explore color, okay. Back color, default resolution, okay. So I'm not seeing the settings that I would think there'd be there to set the text color even. So I'm not sure how that's getting set. Perhaps it's in, I don't know, it must be in something, right? I think I'm starting to fade, so let's put this away. And let's just look at maybe the last few things that we can take a look here. So the Hello Murder project, of the things that it has, okay, we don't need to look at generated, but we have our fonts. Ooh, that does not look very pretty at all. Is it too small? Okay, we're just going to move on there. Fonts, this one's fine. Okay, maybe this Hello Murder project is out of date or something. There are features. So these are sets of systems. Okay, and then there's, and in the very base engine, there's just fonts and the generated, and there's no categories, which, okay, makes sense. If we wanted to say make something, it's like, okay, what's the asset type? Character asset, feature asset, floor asset, game profile, save data, saved world. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of things we play around there. And then prefabs, we have cameraman. I'm guessing that has something to do with like the actual camera object. So, okay, a follow component, and then having a dead zone. Okay, and then the player, which in this case, there actually is a player. Is this okay? But does this actually like get spawned or anything like that? Hello. Okay. Well, when we hit new game, like nothing happens. So a little confused there. Is if there's something supposed to happen. Because obviously there's a main menu. And I guess from there, we don't know how our character's going to be controlled. If they're going to be like omnidirectional, like a twin stick, or like a left right only, or like whatever. So I mean, like, I guess it doesn't make sense to build a character, but I think what I might even try to do, and hope other people are enthusiastic enough to do this, is sort of like start building some hello templates, um, like a twin stick shooter. So it's really just like, here's a character that moves like a twin stick shooter, and it has bullets, and here's an enemy, and I don't know, it moves towards you or something like that. That's the stuff I probably will start with, to figure out like how to get systems to interact with each other, how to get enemies, how to get like an enemy to like look for the player and like head towards the player, how to spawn bullets, how to shoot them in a direction, how to check for collision, all that kind of stuff, and start making a game that has like lots and lots and lots of enemies, because that's where I start to actually get excited about ECS, and working with this kind of stuff. I feel like starting from this completely blank project is like pretty tricky, but what I'd probably just do is try to try to use the Hello Murder project to set up a menu and figure out how like the basic UI works, and even like navigation inside menus. Because if I go in here, options, there actually is stuff in here. Interesting. And then exit. So there's some things there, and so if I can recreate this sort of stuff just by figuring out like how these prefabs work. If I hit new game, oh, I actually do spawn a player. Interesting. Okay, and there's probably no logic running the player, so that kind of makes sense. I guess I was just at a weird resolution where the player wasn't on screen, and the game wasn't actually clamped to that resolution for some reason. So if I I don't think you need to like rebuild, because aren't things supposed to be loaded somehow like during runtime? I'm not sure. And maybe that's only for sprites and those kinds of assets. Maybe that's not for scripts, I guess. But anyway, what's this player called? It's just called player. And it doesn't have any components. It just has a collider and a position. So yeah, it just has a sprite component. So if I look up player, I'm probably going to just find, Hello Murder component type player in just the entities extension, because this is the generated stuff. If I look up the player entity, find all references, there's nothing. Okay. So using I've already closed it. Using the example from the Lundair game, I can start to take a look at sort of how to create the actual player component and create the prefab with the player, and then start adding logic to control the player based on input, and just start kind of rolling through all that. So that's pretty interesting. I think the next video recording that I do is going to be actually starting to think about a super basic system. It's probably just going to be that. It's just like get a player moving, and then it will be like probably spawning bullets or something, and then spawning enemies, and then building the interactions between those things. And then if we can just have like a tank game or whatever, like a single stick or a twin stick shooter or whatever, where we can just like look in a direction and shoot bullets out in the direction on a timer, then like that's the start of something, and that'd be great. So I'm just gonna end things there, and I hope this has been useful for you in some way. I know there was a bit of rambling, there was a bit of searching, but that's just how it goes when you're learning something for the first time. We had some good insights here, and there's definitely, I did read through a lot of the documentation, so it's not like I came into this blind, but at the same time, until I actually see how the things interact and I start messing around with the code and experimenting and seeing like more hands-on stuff with ECS and systems and just all these different elements that I'm not super familiar with, even though I'm an experienced programmer, because I'm coming from Unity and C Sharp. I think we'll get better and better at this, and eventually we'll get to the point where it's like, yeah, I can probably build that Loom Dare game in 72 hours once I kind of know what I'm doing in the engine. Until then, take care and leave comments, questions. Check out the GitHub for the Murder engine. Isidore Sofia and Pedro Saint 11 and all these other fantastic people who have contributed to this so far. If you're interested in contributing, this is open source, so you can make a branch, fork it. You can contribute if you want. It already has 1.1 thousand stars, so it's not like this is nobody knows about it. Like, people are actually starting to kind of learn about this and interact with it and even play around with it. Like I said, I haven't seen anything else about this. And I actually, Isadora herself and Pedro was there in person, and they told us about it. So hopefully people are starting to kind of see a bit more about that. And yeah, hopefully this just really gets improved, and it's something that can keep going and just actually start to have some activity with things being built from it. So enough rambling. I've been Noah. Thanks for watching.